I never imagined I'd walk into a hospital room and feel like I was stepping into a nightmare. There she was, my 12-year-old daughter, Lily, lying on the operating bed, tubes snaking into her small arms, monitors beeping faster than my racing heartbeat. And then came the words that froze me in place. Who signed for her? The surgeon's voice was calm, measured, but there was a weight behind it that made the room feel suddenly colder, sharper. I opened my mouth, and nothing came out. I hadn't signed anything. I was the parent. I was supposed to be in control. So who had? But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. It was supposed to be a routine procedure, a minor surgery, nothing life-threatening. And yet, the way the monitors screamed and the four dripped, everything felt urgent. My mother-in-law, Gloria, stood silently by the door, her posture perfect, her face unreadable. The nurse, Susan, didn't look away. She just moved slowly to close the curtain, the faint click echoing like a warning. My mind scrambled. Why was my daughter here? Why had someone already authorized this? Questions hit me like punches. How could this happen? Who would override a parent's authority? And why? I looked at Lily. Her eyes were wide, but trusting. She didn't understand why her mother was frozen in panic. She didn't know the storm brewing behind the papers the surgeon was holding. She didn't know that the room had gone from routine to potentially catastrophic in seconds. I could feel the tension in my chest tightening with every beep of the heart monitor. The nurse whispered something to Dr. Hale. One word. That was all. And suddenly, the surgeon's face shifted from professional calm to something far more serious. He picked up the phone and said, "Call legal. Now." I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to grab my daughter and run. But I couldn't. I had to understand who had crossed this line, how someone had taken such a monumental decision out of my hands, and why it had happened without anyone telling me. My mother-in-law looked away, but I could see her eyes flicker ever so slightly, an almost imperceptible hint that she knew more than she was letting on. The nurse didn't look away, and that stare made my stomach turn. Something was very, very wrong. And then I realized something that made my blood run cold. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was deliberate. Someone had deliberately signed for my daughter without my consent. Someone had decided her fate for me. And I had no idea what they would do next. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. I couldn't move. The words still echoed in my ears. Who signed for her? My fingers clenched the edge of the hospital bed, my knuckles whitening. I kept glancing at Lily, her small hand wrapped around the sheet, her eyes wide and trusting. How could this happen? How could anyone, decide my 12-year-old daughter's fate without me? Dr. Richard Hale, a man I had trusted to be calm, professional, and precise, flipped the file again, his brow furrowed. "This signature," he said quietly, "it's not yours." I shook my head, my voice barely audible. "I didn't sign it." My words seemed to hang in the air, heavy and accusatory, but nobody answered. Except for the nurse. Susan didn't look away. She moved slowly, deliberately, closing the curtain behind Lily. The soft click was almost ceremonial, like a judge banging a gavel. And then she whispered a single word that made my stomach drop. "Grandmother." I turned toward Gloria, my mother-in-law, who stood perfectly still at the edge of the room. Her eyes avoided mine. There was a flicker of something. Nervousness? Guilt, but she quickly masked it with her usual composed smile. I thought it was okay," she said softly, but her tone didn't match her words. Something about her calmness felt wrong, almost rehearsed. I couldn't tell if she was scared or smug, and that uncertainty gnawed at me worse than the fear itself. Dr. Hale's voice cut through the tension. "Call legal. Now." His eyes were steady on mine, but there was a sharp edge to his tone that I had never heard before. He wasn't asking for a routine confirmation. He was warning. And suddenly, the room felt smaller, the monitors louder, the IVs more menacing. I could feel my heartbeat racing in sync with the alarms, every pulse screaming that this was no ordinary mistake. I swallowed hard, trying to process it. Legal? Why legal? I had never imagined a hospital procedure would spiral into something like this. The thought of my daughter, vulnerable on that table, while the adults around her had hidden agendas, was unbearable. I wanted to shake Gloria, to demand the truth, but I knew the consequences could be worse. One wrong word, one misstep, and we could all be trapped in a mess that went beyond family drama into something far more serious, criminal, maybe even irreversible. I bent down slightly, brushing Lily's hair from her forehead, and whispered, "Mommy's here. I promise." But deep inside, I realized that my promise meant nothing if I couldn't figure out who had betrayed my trust and why. And then it hit me. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. Someone had gone to lengths to override me. And the implications, they were terrifying. I glanced at Susan, the nurse, for a clue. Her eyes didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. She had seen it. She knew it. But she wasn't saying a word yet. And what she would say next would change everything. The room felt smaller now, almost suffocating, as the curtains swung shut behind Lily's bed. Susan, the nurse, moved with an eerie calm, as if she had been expecting this exact moment. I felt trapped between panic and disbelief. How could someone I trusted, someone in my own family, decide my daughter's fate without me? I looked at Gloria, my mother-in-law, and for the first time I saw the calculation behind her composed exterior. Her lips pressed together, eyes fixed somewhere on the wall, avoiding me, avoiding Lily, avoiding the consequences she had just set in motion. Dr. Hale stepped back, holding the file in one hand, the other hovering over the phone. "This is serious," he said, but there was no anger, only measured authority. "Legally, we cannot proceed without parental consent." "And this signature," he shook his head, glancing at Susan. She gave a barely perceptible nod. The single word she had whispered moments ago, "grandmother," was now burning in my mind. Why would Gloria think she had the right to sign for my daughter? I swallowed hard, my mind racing through every memory I had of Gloria over the years. She had always liked control, planning everything, dictating events, making decisions for people who didn't ask. But this was different. This was a violation. A betrayal. My hands trembled as I tried to steady myself. I couldn't understand how someone could justify putting a child under anesthesia without the parents' consent. My heart kept pounding, and I wondered if the monitors were echoing my fear or Lily's. I leaned closer to Lily, brushing her hair back and whispering, "Mommy's here. Don't worry." Her small hand squeezed mine, a silent anchor in the chaos. But even her trust couldn't calm the storm building around us. I turned to Gloria, finally daring to speak. "You didn't have the right," I said softly, but firmly. Her eyes flickered toward mine, and for a fraction of a second, I thought I saw a flash of guilt, or perhaps pride. "I thought it was necessary," she replied, almost too casually. "Necessary? For whom? For what?" My mind spun with possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. Susan's silence weighed on me. She had been observing everything, noticing everything. And I knew deep down that she held pieces of the puzzle I didn't. But she wasn't speaking yet. Her quiet presence felt both comforting and threatening, like she was waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. I didn't know whether she would protect me, protect Lily, or simply watch the consequences unfold. Then Dr. Hale picked up the phone, his voice low but urgent. "We need legal here immediately. We cannot proceed until this is resolved." And in that moment, it became horrifyingly clear, this wasn't a simple oversight. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Someone had intentionally bypassed parental consent. Someone had decided to gamble with my daughter's safety. And what I was about to discover next, the motive behind the signature, would make my blood run colder than I could have imagined. I watched as Dr. Hale held the phone, speaking quietly to the hospital legal team. His calm professionalism barely disguised the tension in his jaw. Every second felt heavier, more suffocating. I glanced at Lily, still lying on the bed, her small body trembling slightly under the blanket. She didn't understand the danger she had unknowingly been placed in, but I did. And I felt a rage and fear that clawed at my chest. This wasn't just a bureaucratic error. This was deliberate. Gloria remained unnervingly still, her hands clasped together, eyes locked on a spot somewhere behind me. Her calmness was infuriating. I had always known she craved control, but this crossed a line I didn't even know she was capable of crossing. I needed answers, and the only way to get them was to confront her. "Why?" I asked, my voice trembling with anger and disbelief. "Why would you sign for my daughter without asking me? What were you thinking?" Gloria's lips curved slightly, almost imperceptibly. "I thought it was best," she said, her tone eerily casual. "I didn't want to wait, and I thought you'd understand." My head snapped toward her. "Best? Thought I'd understand?" For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Did she really believe that overriding me, my parental authority, was acceptable? And then I realized this wasn't about Lily's health at all. This was about control. Gloria wanted to decide, to dominate, to assert her authority over me and over my child. Susan, the nurse, finally spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "I suspected something was off when she arrived this morning," she said. I tried to double-check, but the paperwork was already submitted. Her honesty gave me a thread of relief. At least someone in the room had recognized the danger. She met my eyes, silently offering support, a subtle signal that I wasn't alone in this fight. Then Mr. Bennett, the legal advisor, arrived. His expression was grim. He explained that the signature was not just unauthorized, it was forged. Forged. My stomach dropped. Someone had falsified official medical documents for my daughter, putting her at real risk and crossing the line into criminal behavior. Gloria's composure faltered for the first time. I could see it now, fear mingled with frustration. Her plan had been exposed, and there was no way out. I bent down to Lily, brushing the hair from her forehead. "You're safe," I whispered. But even as I said it, I knew that the battle wasn't over. This wasn't just about today. It was about trust, betrayal, and the length someone would go to assert control. I glanced at Susan again. She had been a quiet observer, but her small act of honesty had changed everything. And then I realized the consequences of this day would ripple far beyond the hospital walls. Gloria's actions weren't just a breach of trust, they were a dangerous message about who really held power. And what I was about to uncover about her motives would shock everyone in that room. But what came next would reveal a truth no one was prepared to face. The room was silent except for the steady beeping of Lily's monitors. Dr. Hale had stepped back, hands folded, eyes scanning the room as if weighing every second. Legal had been called, and the hospital's protocol was now in full motion. The forged consent form had been flagged, and Gloria, my mother-in-law, was confronted, caught in a trap of her own making. I could feel my body shaking, not from exhaustion, but from the weight of what had almost happened. My daughter, lying there so small and trusting, had been moments away from undergoing a procedure that I never authorized. A procedure someone else had decided for her. I bent down and wrapped my arms around Lily. She rested her head on my shoulder, trusting, unaware of the chaos that had unfolded around her. "You're safe now, baby," I whispered, my voice breaking. Every heartbeat of hers under my hands felt like a miracle. But the relief was bittersweet. I knew that safety was fragile and that trust, once broken, was difficult to rebuild. Gloria's motives had become painfully clear: control, dominance, a need to impose her will over those closest to her. And I realized, with a shiver I couldn't shake, that this battle was far from over. Susan, the nurse, lingered near the curtain. Her quiet courage had been a lifeline. Without her hesitation and subtle defiance, the situation could have ended very differently. I caught her eye and offered a small, grateful smile. She nodded slightly, and in that moment, I knew there were allies even in the most unexpected places. Even amid betrayal, there were those who would quietly stand on the side of truth and protection. Dr. Hale approached, his face a mixture of professional concern and human empathy. "You did the right thing by being here," he said quietly. "Sometimes the system fails, and sometimes it takes a parent's vigilance to prevent tragedy." I nodded, swallowing back tears, knowing he was right. I had been my daughter's shield when the people I should have trusted most had faltered. As Gloria was escorted out by legal, I finally allowed myself to breathe. The tension that had held me in a vice for hours slowly began to release, but the lesson lingered. Trust is not guaranteed, even within families. Vigilance isn't paranoia, it's love. And the choices of others, however small they may seem, can ripple through our lives in ways we never imagined. I looked at Lily, and she smiled weakly, the innocence of a child still shining through the fear and chaos. "Mommy," she whispered. I kissed her forehead and held her close. "I promise I'll always protect you," I said, my voice steadier now, filled with quiet determination. And for the audience listening to this story, here's the takeaway. Never underestimate the people around you, never ignore the warning signs, and always fight for the ones you love. What happened in that hospital room could happen to anyone, and it reminds us that vigilance and love are our most powerful shields. The monitors continued their steady rhythm, but in that moment, the most important heartbeat was the one I held in my arms. And I knew, without a doubt, that nothing, not even betrayal from within my own family, would ever come between me and my daughter again.